Today we're looking at the actual query of the Query Edit tab. And as we've done all along in these videos, first we're going to look at the infrastructure that supports it. And then in the next video we'll get into the actual hard-working business logic that does the actual SQL queries. So the infrastructure consists of clicking on a query button that brings up a form, a second form that has a query results, so that when we're running out of space we can bring up another form. So the first thing we have to do is create the second form. We can do that by going to Project and add Windows Form. There's several ways we can do it, but this is one of them. And we'll name this form FRM for Hungarian notation of form query results. And then we come up with a new form tab and a fresh form. I'll just drag this to be fairly large, and we want to get another list view and drag this over, but we don't want it to fill the entire form because we want to have another button on this form. So drag it over to fill it fairly well, but leave enough at the bottom for the button. Actually, we'll probably ultimately have several buttons, but we'll put one in for sure. I'll give this a meaningful name. Of LSV query results. And now drag over a button. I always like to make the font about 16 because I find it hard to read these smaller fonts. So make that about a 16 and give it the text of edit. As I say, I'll probably add a couple more buttons, but this is enough for now. And now to create a code behind for this form, I'll press the F7 button, and that creates this code behind. And as you can see, all we have in this right now is a partial class name and the constructor. And the constructor is actually pretty critical to this form interfacing process. So going back to form 1, want to double click on the query button and move this comment up. And then we want to reference the form we just created, so I type in FRM query results and call the object QR equals new FRM query results, and then just do a QR dot show, probably show dialog would be best. And if we save this and compile and run it, see if we press on the query button, this query results page pops up. But we actually want a two-way communication between the form query results in the form main. And in order to do that, we need to do a couple moves, create a couple variables like a FRM. Whoops, I think I'm in the wrong place there. FRM main, and say M underscore FRM main, and the M is for a member variable. And then we want to change this constructor so it also has a FRM main parameter, and say P underscore FRM main, and we just need one line within the constructor when we say M underscore FRM main equals P underscore FRM main. So we pass the constructor a parameter that's in effect a pointer to the main form, and then we set that pointer equal to this local variable, so this form will always remember how to get to the form main. And another step we need to do is we need to change this instantiation of QR, because this is no longer valid. I now need to put a parameter in, and the parameter I need to put in is this. And the reason for all this is I want to call a function from FRM query results that exists and has to exist in FRM main. And this function has to be public because we're going to call it from FRM query results. And basically what it does is it creates the SQL we want to use to get the query results. So we need to have it return a string, and that string is constructed in this SQL local variable. Needless to say, this is where most of the business logic's going to reside, where we create variable SQL based on what the user's input. But right now we're just returning a static SQL string. So if we go back to the form query results and we double click on the form, we'll go into the form load event. And since we've already constructed the form, the FRM main is valid. So what we want to do is say string SQL equals M underscore FRM main dot get SQE SQL, which should return that string we just looked at. And then to prove that, I'll just pop up a message box. Hit tab to get our default message box. And in the message box, just put the SQL. So if we save this and compile and run it, and then we press the query button, you see the first thing that pops up is a message box that has the SQL that was created and the FRM main get SQL function. So that interface works correctly. And if we press OK, the actual form pops up. So in the next video we'll look at how to create variable SQL that's actually meaningful and display it in this form. But for now, all we wanted to do was establish the infrastructure of the two communicating forms and make sure they all work all right by using what's often called stub-routines, which are subroutines that don't do what they ultimately are meant to do, but just show that the interface works. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot, and I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe.